Welcome to Mike's Integrated Relational Systems Project. This is a children's book for people of all ages. It is a story of how our hero navigated the intellectual reefs and impasses to get to Scholastica's MSW program, and how our hero has applied the 5 good things, the Benedictine values, relational cultural theory, affect regulation, attachment theory, and Hodge's spiritual assessment to gain clarity on how he got here and where he's going. When I was a kid, I was fascinated by dinosaurs. Every Saturday, I woke up early to watch Land of the Lost, about a family who was teleported back to the land of dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are so amazing. What would it have been like to be part of their world? I saw the first Star Wars in the movie theater and became obsessed with outer space and aliens. The night sky captivated me. It made me feel so small to know that all of those stars were suns, and the light I was seeing from the stars was billions of years old. At a young age, the vastness of the universe made me feel existentially insignificant. My parents were social Christians. We went to church because they thought it'd be good for me and my brother, and for the fellowship time, coffee, and chatter with friends afterwards. It's what everyone did in my town. You'd be weird if you didn't go to church. I, however, had my first religious crisis at 17. If heaven and hell are real, and you're there for an eternity, how could people not be thinking of salvation or damnation all of the time? How could people only focus on God one day a week for an hour? There seemed to be too much at stake. I had to be either all in or all out. I was either going to dedicate my life to God or the first philosophy book I read was From Socrates to Sartre by Thelma Zeno Levine. I was enthralled by the book and hung on its every word. She introduced me to the philosophical quest. She introduced me to Socrates' words, "The unexamined life is not worth living." And she introduced me to David Hume, the hard-nosed Scottish empiricist, and his powerful arguments against God, miracles, the self, and causality. My path was set. I was going to follow ideas wherever they took me. As I went through life, I was drawn less and less to the far reaches of the universe or to questions about God, but instead to neurobiology and questions like, how does the brain work? How does it give rise to consciousness? What are emotions? What is emotional health? All of this coalesced into my applying for the College of St. Scholastica's Master of Social Work program. I got in. Woohoo! Part of my journey to the next world was to create an integrated relation systems project where I focused on and addressed some foundational ideas and how they relate to me. John Bowlby was the founder of attachment theory and noted how important those first relationships with our caregiver are. Attention is more important than food. I am reminded of that study where monkeys could either get food from a wire mother or comfort from a cloth mother, and the babies always chose comfort over food. Though I would have been like this monkey chap here who figured out a way to get both. Bowlby's colleague, Mary Ainsworth, created the strange situation where mothers would leave their children for a spell And then, when they returned, Ainsworth studied the child's reaction. Did they go back to playing? Secure attachment? Were they angry? Avoidant attachment? Or were they distressed, having anxious ambivalent attachment? How would I have handled the strange situation? How would I have behaved? Since I have no explicit memories, I'll have to use my current assessment of my orientation to relationships, which works since Bowlby and Ainsworth both claim that the patterns set at infancy are carried with us into adulthood. Let me look at how my body has scored my earlier experiences and attachment. My parents have always been super supportive of me. If I wanted to play a sport, they supported me 100%. When I was bullied in junior high and wanted to go to parochial school, they supported me and paid my tuition. My wife says I was spoiled, and she is right. However, my parents have always been a little on the, shall we say, judgy side. I want to learn more about attachment theory and how much the attachment styles are mutually exclusive and how much overlap there can be. In a first pass at trying to understand myself, I feel that I'm not avoidant dismissive. For example, I am not self-reliant and key relationships are vital to me. I may have a little avoidant fearful going on, however, as I am fearful of rejection. Oh boy, that's a big one for me. I also have some anxiety in relationships. I'm regularly taking the pulse of my relationships. Do they feel healthy? Are there any threats? Do they need more of my attention? And I can also struggle communicating my needs directly. I am definitely conflict avoidant. As far as secure attachment, I am very trusting. Indeed, I trust people even when I plainly shouldn't. And I'm very cooperative and flexible in my relationships. It's certainly not my way or the highway. So where does that leave me? Not sure. Probably a little secure and a little anxious. There is something uncanny that the Benedictine values that are 1500 years old map onto relational cultural theory, a leading current theory of human relationships and flourishing. For me, the most important value is love of learning and knowledge of self and others. I am a learner. My wife and I both are learners. We will read books together on the couch and discuss. We listen to books on tape when we travel. We both say to each other regularly, we are geeks. You can probably see my love of learning coming through my IRSP project. Next is respect. Respect is so important. To me, respect is to give another person the room and support to grow into who they are. The RCT value of act and create is also very important to me, but more about that later. Next on the list is hospitality. I get this from my parents. They would sponsor families as part of their church and create meaningful relationships with them. I still have that zest for hospitality, opening our door to friends and family at every opportunity, but to a lesser degree than my parents. And finally, community and connection. 15 years ago, that would have been very important to me. Now, at this point in my life, not so much. I've given a couple of spoiler alerts already as to my religious journey. Now for the rest of the story. I was raised a Christian, but had trouble with the metaphysics. As noted earlier, once I started reading philosophy, I began moving toward atheism. College sped up that process. I was lucky enough to travel abroad to India when I was 21 years old. There's me in the upper right photo. I was enthralled with and overwhelmed by the culture and religion. One night, when staying in a hotel, I looked in the drawer and found the Bhagavad Gita, the hotel's equivalent to the Gideon Bible. I spent the next 4 hours reading. I was hooked. And I kept the book, rationalizing that, like the Gideon's Bible, the intention was for me to keep it. And I had developed a spiritual relationship with the book. Anyway, what stuck with me to this day, I remember reading Arjuna asking Krishna on the eve of battle, how can one understand the savagery of this world? To which Krishna says, you are part of it. We want to attribute the ills and responsibility for pain in this world to others. But first, we have to see ourselves as the cause of the ills of this world. My turn toward the east had begun. Amy Banks's book, Wired to Connect, focuses on the CARE acronym of calm, acceptance, resonance, and energy. C is for calm. So much of us is affected by our autonomic nervous system. Working in the background, subconsciously, it regulates our bodily functions. If I had to remember to breathe or to digest my food, I'd be in trouble. My autonomic nervous system does that for me. My autonomic nervous system also automatically reacts to the world I perceive and experience. These reactions are the sympathetic and parasympathetic systems. The sympathetic system triggers the fight or flight response. Our body makes changes in preparation and releases cortisol and adrenaline for quick energy. The parasympathetic system counterbalances the sympathetic and brings about relaxation and regeneration. The vagus nerve is the main contributor of information for the parasympathetic system. It brings information of the inner organs such as the gut, liver, heart, and lungs to the brain. Now, in the face of trauma, the parasympathetic system can go to the extreme and trigger a freeze or faint response. You can also see that here in this video I've added of people on the slingshot carnival ride. Fascinating stuff. In fact, it's usually the man who experiences this. And what's happening is called vasovagal syncope, which results from an overactivation of the parasympathetic to the point of shutting down. So it's healthy for all of us to have good vagal tone so that our autonomic nervous system is optimized for relaxation and regeneration. And in today's world, that can be hard to achieve. I enhance my vagal tone for a balanced autonomic nervous system by exercise, yoga, being outdoors, mindfulness, and emotional regulation. The A in CARE stands for acceptance. We are social beings, and our survival used to, and still does, depend on life in a group. Ostracism meant certain death. Social acceptance is so important to us. Amy Banks discusses the social pain overlap theory, SPOT. Neuroscience is learning that the pain of social rejection is the same as the pain from physical injury or illness. The dorsal anterior cingulate cortex is the alarm system of the brain that is activated when in physical pain. What neuroscience has also shown is that social pain activates the same region of the brain. Physical pain and social pain are two sides of the same coin. People who know me know this is true of me. When I feel taken advantage of, my responses are dramatic. People say my revenge is 100-fold. One story, when I was a teenager, a group of friends were at Taco Bell. A friend of mine from across the table shot ice through a straw at me and thought it was funny. My instant reaction was to take the entire cup of Coke I was drinking and dump it on his lap. Fortunately, the story was of a much younger self, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. I am much different now. The R in CARE stands for resonance, the state of being in tune with others. Mirror neurons facilitate this resonance and empathy we can have with and toward others. As the name implies, these neurons are activated both when we do something and when we watch others doing the same thing. Amy Banks discusses her mirroring with a client, Jessica. Quote, "Just as a fish knows how to turn in unison with the rest of its school, Jessica and I instinctively knew how to move closer together in this magical mutual moment. It's not just emotional, it's biological, down to our nerve cells." My wife and I have our normal couple disagreements about whose turn it is to do the dishes and whose fault it is that we missed taking out the garbage. But we're both very mirrored to each other, such that we can sense how the other person feels before they say it. We're connected at a cellular level. Amy Banks talks about positive relational moments where you feel safe and happy in another person's presence. We both consciously carve out positive relational moments where we put aside all the distractions and minutiae and are present and safe for one another. E is for energy. Amy Banks talks about the rewards when we engage in healthy, growth-promoting activities. One of those rewards is dopamine. The most recent book I read is The Molecule of More by Daniel Lieberman. I highly recommend it. An entire book devoted to dopamine. Dopamine, yes, it's exhilarating, but it also has a dark side. The neurotransmitter dopamine was discovered by Kathleen Montague in 1957. It was soon dubbed the pleasure molecule. When studying cocaine addicts, they found that those who reported the most pleasure had the most dopaminergic activity. However, more studies of the neurotransmitter show it not as so much the pleasure molecule, but as the molecule of anticipation and possibility. It is dopamine that is behind those extramarital affairs that people have when they later can't understand why they would have done that. And it's dopamine behind our therapy shopping, where we think buying this will make our life so much better, only to be disappointed when we actually have it. John Pettigrew showed that the brain divides the external world into the parapersonal, that here and now space, that space within arm's reach, and the extrapersonal space, the space out there, beyond our grasp, the future. There are different neurotransmitters for each space. Dopamine is associated with our extrapersonal space. It is dopamine that plans and plans that summer vacation and has so much anticipation for it. And it is the here and now transmitters that are present when we're actually on that vacation. Ever wonder why it is that what you dream about and desire is never the same as when you have it? Different neurotransmitters. Lieberman says that happiness comes when we can balance our here and now neurotransmitters with our dopamine. The best way to do that? Create things. Quilt, write stories, cook meals, build things, make IRSP projects. For me, my creative happiness is building things, like my chicken coop pictured here that I built this summer. This all goes back to Aristotle, who said that happiness comes from arete, or mastery of our creative energy realized in the world. Our time and story is almost over. The last chapter is emotional regulation. How do I regulate my emotions? What started my journey down this MSW path is a podcast from 2006. I was a Radiolab fan, and there was this podcast on our emotions that gripped me. I want to play that actual segment that changed my life.
Asinine theory in psychology back around 1900, one of the, grand old poobahs of psychology, William James,
and he's trying to answer the question where feelings came from.
That's Jonah Lehrer, a science writer. He really likes William James. He's written a lot about him. And he says 100 years ago, William James poses a thought experiment.
He gives the example of a bear.
He says, imagine you're walking through the woods. All of a sudden, from behind a tree, a bear attacks. And he wondered, William James did, okay, so the bear attacks, you're going to feel scared. But what exactly is that feeling of fear made of? Which seems like a strange question to ask.
Yeah, but he was trying to be empirical about it. He was trying to be a good psychologist. And his answer was that the feeling is the perception of your body.
Meaning, step one, you see the bear.
You see a bear.
With his teeth and his claws. Step two, your body responds.
The fast heartbeat, the adrenaline coursing in your bloodstream.
It's only in step three, when the brain sees the body respond, does it then trigger the feeling of fear.
The feeling of fear comes from the perception of those changes in your body. If you took away the heartbeat, if you took away the body.
I know, lame. That changed your life? But it did. It got me, like William James, to think about and try to understand what fear, happiness, anger, and sadness are. I like the idea that our emotions are our perceptions of our bodily states. It has led me to take better care of my body and the situation I put it in. Person and environment is a key social work concept that I stumbled upon in 2006. Also, it has created a space between me and my emotions. My emotions are not me, and this space helps me to better manage and be more in control.